Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Perpetual here. If you're new, you are warmly welcome. And guys, thank y'all so much for joining me today as we meal prep for a very busy week ahead. And this is my way of making sure that we have delicious home cooked meals. When I'm meal prepping, I always like to make a batch of seasoning that I'll be using throughout. So today I use some onions, ginger, garlic, and I put in some sankofa, chicken or beef, I can't remember, some anise seeds, some rosemary. That is usually my go-to. I added a little bit of water and I'm going to blend it up and set it aside. So for that seasoning, I am going to be using it for chicken and also for goat meat. I am adding a bit of Maggi seasoning tablet into each of the pots. The first one, the yellow one, has chicken, and then the next one has the goat meat. Again, same base seasoning, just different proteins. And I'm not going to wash out the blender. I'm going to use it later on, so that seasoning in there will not go to waste. Now I'm giving it a good stir, and for the chicken I added some white pepper, and at the beginning I added salt to both the chicken and the goat meat. Now what I'm switching over is some beans. I had cooked it, or I was cooking it before I decided to film, and so now I have my beans going, and my chicken and my goat meat also did a quick little clean. And then when the chicken was ready, I went ahead to start frying it, and I'm frying it in batches. So once I start frying the chicken, when I'm done frying the chicken, I'm going to keep the stock because I'm going to be making stew. And so what I like to do is, a lot of times when the chicken is frying, I use that opportunity to prep my other ingredients that I'm going to be using for the other meals. So in this instance, I am slicing up some tomatoes, and what I'm doing is I'm taking the seeds and putting it into the blender because I'm going to be making some stew. So instead of getting rid of the seeds completely, as in throwing them out, I'm just going to put it into the blender so I can blend it along with the tomatoes that I'm using. And I am also blending up some onions, habanero pepper, and some tomatoes, and I'm going to be using that for my bean stew. And so in this pot I have some palm oil and some momone, and I'm going to let that fry for a few minutes so that the momone will infuse into the palm oil, and I have added some onions as well. After a few minutes of the onions and momone cooking, I am also going to check on my chicken, make sure I'm not burning it, and so I'm taking that batch out. I'm just putting it on some lined plate with paper towel, and then the next batch goes in. And then now back to our bean stew, or at least the base of the bean stew. Now that the onions have caramelized, I'm gonna go ahead and add in that blended tomato, pepper, onion mix. Let that cook down, and then I'm going to add the fresh tomatoes. And then I'm going to cover it up and let it cook for a few minutes. When it comes to bean stew, I really keep it simple when it comes to seasonings. So you will not see me putting a lot of seasoning in here. That's just how I like my bean stew. Anyway, the next batch of chicken is ready. So I am getting that out of the oil, and then I'm going to fry the next batch. Now, of course, if I was being honest with myself, I could have just used a bigger frying pan so that the chicken would fry a lot faster. I just did not want to use or waste so much oil. And now I'm going to start my tomato stew, chicken stew prep. So with that, I am adding some tomatoes to the seeds that I had earlier and some bell pepper. And then to my big pot, I added in the oil into the stock, and I added some tomato paste. And then I added my tomato mix. So when it comes to tomato stew, when I am in a hurry, I like to just blend up all the ingredients and toss it in there and allow it to cook. So pepper, onions, bell peppers, tomatoes, all of it goes in. I did not add any ginger and garlic and all of that because I have that in the stock. And now that the stew is underway and the base is on the stove, I am now moving on to prepping my protein. What I'm doing here is splitting it. So I'm making okra stew or soup, more soup consistency, and my bean stew. And I'm going to be using some tuna and mackerel. So what I'm doing is I'm using the smaller pieces for the bean stew, and then I'll be using the bigger pieces for my okra stew. For the bean stew, I just added some canned mackerel, geisha, and also the tuna and the smoked mackerel that we call salmon in Ghana. Cover it up, and again, I need to make sure that I'm checking on everything. So did a quick check on the stew as well to ensure I do not burn it. And I did this, I think, on a Monday. And while all of this was going on, guys, I was also working. So I really had to make sure that I was keeping an eye out, or else I would have burned the food so easily, because balancing all of this is not always so simple. Anyway, my beans is ready. And so I added a bit of salt, and I used the wooden spoon to kind of mash up the beans a little bit, because I do like the consistency better that way. You don't have to. Anyway, I added a little bit of seasoning. So it's a Maggi shrimp tablet. I used about half. Again, I like to keep it simple. And then moving quickly to the stew, I added some sankofa stew, 1 packet, and then 2 packets of curry powder. And now the bean stew is ready. So I'm going to portion it out so that I can freeze it, and I can have really quick access to it when we're having it. The plan is to have it on a Saturday, just before we head out for the day. So I keep it simple, just put it into these containers, and a few times you see me picking something out of the stew. That's just the little bit of bones that I can see, and that's just coming out. Next up, my okra prep. So when it comes to okra stew, I like it chunky. My kids like it more on a soup consistency. My husband is indifferent, so most of the time I go with the kids' consistency that they like. So what I'm doing is using just my Ninja chopper to get it nice and smooth into smaller pieces. And I always like a little bit of texture, even though I'm making it into soup consistency. So I chopped some up by hand, and I chopped it into different shapes just to add a little bit of, of texture to it, because I prefer it that way. Left to my kids alone, I would have used a chopper for all of it, but I don't like how that looks. Anyway, I am adding in my ayoyo as well. I chopped it up a little bit. It's all going to cook into the okra anyway. And then I added a tiny bit of baking soda, about half a teaspoon, just to bring out that green color a lot more. And then now I'm gonna go ahead and start the okra. So I am starting with some palm oil and some momone as well, which is fermented or cured fish. It has a very pungent smell, but guys, it takes your meals to a whole different level. Anyway, after that and the oil kind of marry a little bit, I'm gonna go in with some sliced onions, and I am blending some onions and pepper, and I'm going to be using that. And the okra and ayoyo mix looks amazing, even though I did let it spill because I forgot about it. Because again, guys, I was working as well while doing all of this. And then I'm going to put in my pepper mix, which is just onion and habanero pepper. And then I went in with a little bit of seasoning. Again, Maggi shrimp tablet, I used about half. And I am gonna go ahead and give that a good stir. I do not use tomatoes when I'm making okra, just because it does affect the sliminess. You can add a little bit if that's what you prefer. And at this point, I am putting in my goat meat, and I'm going to stir that up, let that fry a little bit, and then add a little bit of stock. Eventually all the stock will go in. I waited on the willy because I got very soft willy, so I did not want to put it back into the stew too early. And next thing, I am putting in my tuna, and eventually I added in my smoked mackerel as well. Today I did not use any crab because when I went to Texpo Market, there was no crab. I could not believe it. But it is what it is. So eventually the wele goes in as well, and I made sure to find a very soft wele because Nanekia likes wele, but she likes it very soft. Anyway, I added that little bit of smoked mackerel in there, and our stew is looking amazing. And because everything, all the proteins have been cooked, it didn't take long, and it was time for me to add in my okro and ayoyo mix. Sometimes I will use boma, any greens really, to add to the okra. Sometimes I also add in some garden eggs, but today I just decided not to. And then I went in with a little bit of onions, and I'm going to let that simmer for a few minutes while I portion out my chicken stew, because that is ready as well, and it looks amazing. And then for the okra, what I did, I just poured it all into one container, and then I decided to give my husband a portion for work. So I was just going to portion that out and keep that in the fridge as opposed to the freezer. And I had to do a little taste test. I am actually not a big fan of banku or any soupy food for that matter, but today I just felt like taking a few bites. And that was it for that day. But the beauty of meal prep was that on that Saturday, after meal prep, guys, it was so easy to just take out one portion of the bean stew, fry some cocoa, and lunch was ready. It was so easy. I did not have to stress, and we had a busy day that day, so it was great to have a nice meal before we head out. I'm just dishing some out for my kids, and they like to do the gari sprinkling themselves. It makes them feel more involved. So Nanekia did hers first, and of course, Madam doing the most, she had to sprinkle it on the cocoa as well, and she had a little speech going on pretending she was on the channel. And of course, my little boy Nana Kojo as well, Mr. Independent, also had to do his own portion of the gari. And guys, last but not least, I served myself, served my husband, and we were good to go with very delicious lunch. This is my portion, and nobody should come for me. Cocoa should look like this. I do not know how y'all eat cocoa that is not fully cooked, because when I see the ones that look yellow, in my head is not fully cooked. Like my sister eats cocoa and the shade is always very questionable. I like mine a nice golden, almost dark brown. So she always, anytime she fries cocoa for me, she has to fry it a little bit more than hers. Anyway, guys, that is it. I hope you enjoyed this meal prep, and I will see y'all again very soon. Bye.